10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 446. Hey everybody, welcome into episode 446 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Can't believe it's March already. March of 2025. Crazy. So we're going to get started on a new series of exercises, a new series of learning, but we are going to keep talking about density just in a different way. So all the stuff that we have done last month in February is leading us to looking at density in a different way. And I think this is a really important topic. I've also been getting a lot of feedback from all of you that you think this is an important topic. And some of the stuff that we were doing last month really helped you to start thinking about how your solos are structured in terms of density. So last month, we were exclusively focusing on notes per bar. And obviously, that has a huge effect on density, right? You had a lot of freedom in terms of like where you wanted to play those notes, right? The only requirement was please do this certain number of notes per bar. The subdivision was up to you. As long as you can fit the notes in the bar, the number of notes that I wanted you to play in the bar, you are free to do whatever you want. So now we're going to look at another aspect of density that I think is just as important, but it's just a different train of thought, and that is subdivision. Because subdivision has a huge effect on perceived density. So I want you to think about something first. If you were to hear somebody play an entire chorus of just whole notes, would you think that that chorus was really dense in terms of how it comes across to you as the listener? Well, my guess would be that most of you would say, no, it's not very dense at all. There's not very many notes, right? It's one note per bar. So it's not really that dense. But it's really interesting, right? Because if you really think about what's happening, if somebody were to play an entire chorus of whole notes, it's as dense as you can get in terms of the amount of time that you're hearing a note being played versus the amount of empty space. And I hope that makes sense to you. So you can't get any more dense than holding a note for literally every beat for an entire chorus. But it's really interesting the way that our brain works, right? Because me personally, I would not walk away from 32 bars of all whole notes going, oh my gosh, that solo was so dense. I need to listen to it, 100 more times to really wrap my head around what's going on. So the other thing that we need to explore is subdivisions and how those play on your own perception and your listener's perception of how densely you are playing. Because here's the thing, if I listen to another solo that was comprised purely of the subdivision of 16th notes, right? So the entire solo is only the subdivision of 16th notes, but there's more open space. So the idea is not that every single beat of the entire chorus is filled with these 16th notes, but since that's the only subdivision that we're hearing, it comes across as more dense, even if there's more open space than in the whole note example. So you're starting to see how this sort of plays on a feeling of density. So we want to explore that. And what I'm going to have you do this month is we're going to go back to our old friend, the blues. And the reason we're going to do that is just because this type of work, when you initially get into it, is best done with a simple form, right? Last month we did Recordame, which actually has a lot of harmonic motion, but we want to just go this month with a form that's super comfortable for us. And I think most of you, the blues is maybe one of the more comfortable forms because you can play it with any degree of complexity you want, right? You could just use the major blues scale or the minor pentatonic or the minor blues scale, or the whole thing if you choose to, or you can really play a lot of changes. So it'll provide a lot of flexibility for you this month to explore the stuff that I would like to explore. So we're going to use a concert F blues for the month, and I'm going to give you a very concrete sort of assignment each week here. So this week, as we get into density based off of subdivision, what we're going to deal with as our first subdivision is quarter note triplets. That will be the first one that we're going to work with. So here is the assignment for this week. What you're going to do is you're going to put on a backing track for the blues, and you are going to try to play, I don't know, anywhere from 2 to 5 choruses using only quarter note triplets, but I want you to do your best to play them continuously. Now, if you play a wind instrument, you are going to have to stop to breathe. But the only time that flow of quarter note triplets should stop should be to grab a breath, and then you're right back in on it. If you play guitar or piano or a non-wind instrument, you can literally just play them forever without stopping. And that's the goal. Can you play a couple to 5 choruses just using the subdivision of a quarter note triplet? So let me demonstrate the first part of the assignment. I'll play like 3 choruses of just quarter note triplets, and I will only stop to breathe. And then you'll hear me come right back in on it. Okay, so there's the first part of the assignment. What effect did that have on your ears as a listener in terms of density? Start thinking about that. Okay, these are quarter note triplets. It's continuous. Does it sound really, really dense, or doesn't it? Right? Or is it somewhere in between? What's the vibe that I'm getting off of this particular subdivision? And really start to unpack that. We'll all have different conceptions of that. Oh, geez, that was really super dense. Or, geez, that wasn't really dense at all. It didn't sound like there was a lot of density going on, right? So start to think about that, because this will really inform ultimately the way that you want to play. Also, it's just a great exercise to see if you can keep those quarter note triplets going without drifting, right? Getting out of time, starting to accidentally play a different subdivision. Can you solidly play quarter note triplets for a couple choruses? Okay, so there's a lot going on here. We're thinking about density as our first priority, but you can trust that this work is actually excellent in a lot of other ways, which is the beauty of everything that we work on in jazz. We're never just working on one thing. Okay, tangent over. The second part of your assignment is to now free yourself up a little bit. So what you are going to do is you can only play that subdivision. Okay, that hasn't changed. You can still only play the subdivision of quarter note triplets, but you can freely use them, meaning that you can play a bar of quarter note triplets, then take 2 bars off if you want to, then play a half a bar of quarter note triplets, and then take 5 bars off if you want to. You can play an entire chorus of quarter note triplets and then rest for a full chorus, or anything in between. This is where now we take that subdivision and we start exploring the effects we can create with it. Okay. And I still want you to keep the topic of density top of mind. Okay. But really, this is a lot more experimental. So what I suggest doing is going right from the really prescribed, hey, you've got to fill every single measure with quarter note triplets. When you're done with that, go right into this exercise. Let me demonstrate. So I'm only going to use that subdivision, but I'm going to freely use it, and I'm going to experiment with how much I play it and how much I play nothing. Because we have a binary choice here. We could either play quarter note triplets or we can play nothing. And that is a really, really good thing to explore. Let's check this out. Okay, so hopefully you get the idea. What I'm going to do for the Patreon members is I'm going to give you a couple of backing tracks at some different tempos, and I'm also going to give you those trading tracks where we're trading choruses doing these two things so that you just have something fun to work along with. You should be doing it on your own with the backing track, but it's always fun to trade back and forth with somebody else, puts new sounds in your ears. A lot of really good stuff when you're trading with somebody. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, maybe you're new to the show, we're a listener-supported podcast, which means we don't do any ads on the show. Instead, we just rely on the listeners, the people that are getting something out of this to support us. We do that in the form of a small monthly donation using the Patreon platform. And in return for that donation, you get all of the tools and resources that I create for all these episodes so that you could just go and start practicing this stuff basically without any barriers. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, or you can go to patreon.com and search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. And for anybody that's thinking about doing that, I have a favor to ask you. We were just notified that if you sign up for Patreon on the iOS Patreon app, so if you download the app onto your iPhone and you sign up for the Patreon through that, Apple is going to be taking 30% of that subscription fee, which, I mean, that's just not sustainable for me to do this. If 30% of the revenue is just being taken off the top. We try to keep this a very, very affordable, but wow, that's just a real blow to people like me, the independent creator. So if you're gonna sign up for the Patreon, please go and do it on a web browser. Then you can download the app and you could still use it, but Apple's not going to be taking 30% of the revenue. So really appreciate it if you choose to do that. That's just going to allow us to keep doing this without basically having to close our doors. Just really sad that the money is coming out of the pockets of the creators who are barely hanging on anyway. So again, you can go to 10minutejazzlesson.com and click on one of the Patreon banners, or you can go to patreon.com and search for the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. But please do that on a web browser so that we can keep this thing going. Thank you to some new patrons this week. Quick shout out to Tim and Trevor. Thank you guys for joining up. And of course, to the over 350 members we have over there. Thank you. Thank you for supporting. We could not do this without you, and you're the reason that this keeps coming out each and every week. All right, so get to work on this stuff. Remember, quarter note triplets over the blues, and we'll see you next week with another brand new episode. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.